Hi, my name is Rachel McLeod. I'm a licensed clinical social worker and emotional wellness coach, and I help people do the brain work involved to resolve symptoms of anxiety, depression, and traumatic stress. Put another way, the brain heals and resolves these, and it has a specific process for doing that. And that's what I help people accomplish. And so I am coming to you today to talk about why you're stuck listening to your parent complain and what you can do about this. I had a wonderful comment by somebody who was reading a post that I wrote, I shared about complaining and being stuck listening to people complain. And they said, well, what if the person complaining is your parent? And I shared a post, a comment with them about that and how to resolve that as well. And I thought, let me share it, go live about this because this is a very common thing that takes place in unhealthy dynamics in parent and child relationships and can really continue long well after the child is an adult. And so it's something that we can really get stuck in, and there are reasons for that. If this is something you've experienced where you feel that you are on the listening end of your parents still, and you are not enjoying it, and you do not find that you are a willing participant, but that you are there by some sort of unseen force and you can't really figure out what that is, that's what we're going to talk about and how to resolve that. And so it's very important that this is just a not this is very a very disempowering place to get stuck in with your parent for both people. It's very disempowering for the parent. Little do they know they are damaging their relationship with you. It's actually causing separation, and it's an unequal power dynamic. I mean, it's just not um, not a beneficial thing to get stuck in. And when you're a child, it's very difficult to pull out of this. But when you're an adult, you have the power to do that, and it's really frustrating to find yourself in the same situation. Like, why am I still doing this? And I don't want to do this anymore. And so we're going to talk about why and how to heal and resolve this and do both you and your parent a favor. They will not feel like it's a parent favor right away, but as your relationship gets healthier and healthier, um, hopefully that shifts. That's not always the case. I wish it were, but that's not always the result we get when we choose to be healthy and we choose to transition from maybe a dysfunctional relationship to a healthy relationship. That's always a really challenging place to be. I hate doing this with children, helping them get healthy while their parents do not. That's why I don't do this work with children, and why I will do this more with teenagers who are ready to make that shift. It is hard to ask a child to um, move to a different country, right, without their parent. And when we're talking about dysfunctionville and crossing the sea over to Functionville, it does feel, and there are many similarities between actually moving to a whole different country. So I really would encourage you, if you have a child, that you don't expect them to do that, but that you are willing to do this work with them. However, it is what it is, and we don't always get our therapist wish list. And sometimes we're just in that space where it's time to decide to heal and move on. So I we never have to do this in big steps. Complaining is a really small thing that can have big impact. And so I don't want you to think, okay, I'm going to have to move to another island. I don't know that you're going to. And who knows? You might be in the boat with your parent on the way over there, and you guys are on your way to Healthy Island together, or maybe you're all moved to Healthy Island already, but you still have this one last lingering problem that's driving everybody nuts. Nobody wants to be doing it anymore, but you seem to be stuck doing it. Okay, so there's so many options here, and so but I really want you to understand what's going on and how to resolve this. I could give you tons of suggestions about what you can do and strategies for this, but That's not strategies are for the front of the brain, the prefrontal cortex, the thinking center, your solutioner, right? The part of your brain that helps you make solutions, be rational, examine things, sort things out. That's what the front of the brain does. And strategies are for that part of the brain. But I don't find this problem is actually created in that part of the brain, and it's not resolved by that part of the brain. So this really ends up being more of a survival system problem. And so we really want strategies that will work with the survival system. And so basically, what's happening in this problem is that your survival system is when you're in those moments when you're listening to your parent complain. I mean, stay with me here. There's actually four parts of you that will be communicating about what's going on in this complaining interaction with your parent. And I want to challenge you to slow down in those moments and observe that. I mean, that's just a whole show in and of itself. And when your parent is complaining at you, you will watch one part of yourself have a whole dialogue while they're going doing that. You might see another part of you remembering memories where this has happened before. You might tune into your body and notice different sensations going on in your body, like tightness in your chest or your stomach sinking. You might notice all sorts of things happening. You might notice your one part of your brain is telling stories about this and making illustrations, and you're just watching them. And it is fascinating when you come into yourself in those moments and see exactly what's going on. Um, but what happens in these moments, if you're stuck here, there are parts of you sending up all kinds of information. Some of this is flashbacks. Some of this is powerlessness, emotion, stuck emotion. And lots of that stuff registers in the brain as pain and fear of pain. All the other times when you interrupted the parent, all the other times when you got in trouble because you weren't listening, all the other times you tried to get out of this and it failed, all of that information is coming up in that very split second when your parent is complaining. And you may not even be aware of this, but you might. And if you're working with me, you're going to become. And if you're watching this and you take that moment, you will discover all this stuff going on because this is how the mind and body works. We are not just having a one dimensional interaction with our parents complaining and we're just there and checking out. No, your whole system is participating in this conversation. And so it's all sharing all that it knows about this conversation and how to behave in it. And all of that information will try to rush up to the front of the brain so you can actually make some solutions and solve this. But because a lot of this information that surfaces registers in the brain as pain, your survival system is alerted and it's like, hey, there's danger. And it begins to choose for you a survival state, right? And it's not thinking about this. It's not thinking, oh, this is mom. It doesn't even, it's not making a distinction between this is mom and this is a bear that wants to eat us alive. It just says there's pain happening, we need to get away from it. And so you'll go into a survival state. Then your thinking center shuts down. A lot of the strategies that you may have practiced or rehearsed go offline, and you find yourself stuck and you can't get out of this conversation. You don't want to be in the conversation. You're stuck in the conversation. You don't want to be in the conversation, and repeat until the conversation is over. And on the outside of you, you might be doing some fawning things, some survival state fawning. You might notice yourself saying, yeah, sure. You might even be um, doing other people pleasing activities like tell me more, even though inside you're like, don't tell me anymore. I don't want to be doing this anymore, right? But you can't make it stop because you're actually in a survival state, and that part of you overrides your thinking center. It overrides all of you, takes control of the inner driving wheel of your life and your body and your mind, and makes you do things that it believes that you'll have a high chance of surviving if you do these behaviors, which you will usually. But what happens in those moments is that you're not being who you are. You're being who your survival system is making you be. And so, and here you are locked into this interaction with your parent that you would really like to be out of already. And so, when you can understand that this is going on, then you can really start looking underneath this because it's this I it is so much faster to resolve this issue than it is to talk about this issue. I think we're 9 minutes into this. We can have most of this stuff resolved by just applying the right strategies and interventions. But I'm going to talk you through it because let's do that. Um, okay, so one of the deals with these relationships with parents is that they're so complex. It is much easier to resolve this with a coworker than it is with a parent because you don't have as much complexity around a coworker, and you have a lot more interactions um, in relationships with parents that are surging through your whole system and shutting your brain off, turning your survival system on, and and getting you stuck in freeze or faint mode, engaged in this conversation, not stuck. And so I want you to understand that there is a little bit more complexity here, and but really, what we've got going on here are some uh, unhealthy agreements to be able to participate in your relationship with your parent. Underneath all of this is one of the things that we're going to find. We're going to find things like I um, in order to uh, be invited to family dinner, I'm being I'm just making this up right now. I need to listen to mom so she doesn't get mad and say I can't come to the dinner, right? That's a very obvious one, but that can be one of the agreements that is unspoken in between you, that if I need to listen to these complaints, because if I don't, then this is going to happen, this is going to happen, and this is going to happen, and that would be dangerous. Your survival system, all of your body is sending that information up, and it's really interesting when I'm working with people. I will slow this whole interaction down. My internet's having a challenge. But I will slow this whole interaction down, and we'll be able to grab each piece of that information that's coming up, whether it's coming up from their body, whether it's coming up from their subconscious mind, whether it's coming up from their thinking center, or whether their survival system is really reacting. And we will gather that information and help make sure it gets through past the survival system up to the front of the brain. It really is that. It's really that simple. The problem is that this stuff is surfacing all the time, but it can't get through. And a lot of times it's because we're so used to it that we're not even thinking this is relevant information, or we understand it very in a very small way. Like every time I talk to mom, I have this sinking feeling in my stomach, right? That's information that actually needs to get up to the front of the brain, and it needs to get past the survival system up there. But it's pain. It's actual pain in your physical body. That is your survival system is listening to that pain, and it cares about it, and it's hearing all the messages it's sending. It's in the language of the body, but it hears all that information that's coming up, and it's like there's danger here. I don't even know what it is, but there's danger. And then it's like, oh, we're engaged with mom, and then it's like, tell me more. And then your whole body is saying, hey. And this could be a conversation with dad. I mean, I'm not trying to throw moms under the bus here. This could be a conversation with your dad. Maybe there's agreements there. I have to listen to dad, or else fill in the blank. The brains love to fill in the blank. That's a strategy I teach when trying to pull up the subconscious programming, is to have fill in the blank sentences, and you just listen. Let's do it again, and you'll hear yourself, so you can have a moment to connect some of these dots. um, I would interrupt, set some healthy boundaries in this conversation right now with dad, but and just listen, see what you notice. You might notice something happening in your body. You might notice your shoulders coming up. You might notice tension in your chest. You might notice your stomach aching. I don't know what you would notice. You're tuning into your inner world. You're going to find this. And or you might just like, I know, and you're going to have all the words for it, and you're going to be like, then this is going to happen, then he's going to do this, and then he's going to say that. It's just not even worth it. And all of that stuff is important information that needs to be processed. That's the stuff that I'm always talking to you about. Open the healing pathways, help your brain, help your body and your mind, your subconscious, help your survival system, help all these parts of you actually get this healing work done and complete its process. And we can do that by using some interventions that actually work to pull the survival system off of its um, survival path and actually get it to calm and let healing happen. And by also taking this information that registers as pain and start reducing that pain so that it's easier for it to get to the front of the brain. And so those interventions are emotional freedom techniques, thought field therapy, energy medicine, and EMDR, eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. And these are just the ones I specialize in. These are the ones that I know will get the job done. These are the ones that I teach my clients how to use for themselves so that they can really take hold of their healing journey. And there's other ones. I don't specialize in those, so I can't tell you how this works with those ones. But really what's so important is that you understand that your body wants to solve, and your whole system, your brain and your body want to solve this parent uh, can't stop listening to your parents complain problem just as much as you do. And so that stomach ache is actually part of the solution trying to be created. It's just blocked. And so while using those interventions, we can really open this process up, this healing process and these communication channels, and really get all of that stuff through to the right part of the brain that can actually do this healing work and will do it quickly. It is so fast because all of this communication is happening. It's an electrical process. And so when we can open the doors, the healing pathways for 30 seconds to 2 minutes, that's a lot of electricity. It's a lot of electrical information. And so we can really resolve these deep issues very, very quickly. And as I was saying, these parental relationships are more complex. The more you've been working on them, the easier and faster they resolve. If you're new to the parent child dynamic and unearthing yourself from it, and then there can be quite a few layers of healing work that needs to take place. And if you think about each of those healing um, layers, uh, it can take anywhere from 2 weeks to 2 months to resolve this kind of issue, depending upon the complexity, how long you've been working on it, what insights you already have about it, what your awareness is. And so this is one that you can start expecting once you get your brain to resolve this. What's really cool about this, I like to get the brain to resolve this, because then what happens is actually in the moments when you're with the parent, you will start to behave differently, and you'll behave in relation to them and you won't just go rogue. I mean, sometimes people do, but I have people keep using these interventions enough so that they don't just start using the first solutions that their brain gives them, but they kind of help their brain curate solutions so that those solutions are fitting to the situation and how they want to be and who they want to show up as in that situation. And your brain's job is to make that for you. Your brain's job is to make wonderful solutions that are fitting for you and how you want to be and how you want to show up in the world and the kindness you want to offer, the healthy, boundaried, compassionate kindness. Okay. And so if you're not getting that, then you have an opportunity to really help your brain do that, and really, really do that, I'm going to say. Um, so but coming back to these relationships with parents are really complex. It's because they're early relationships. This is where and what happened along the way somewhere is that we learned and we dropped our healthy boundaries with that interaction with that parent in that situation, maybe more situations, but we in that moment in those interactions when it comes to the parent complaining, we drop the boundaries there, and we learn to, or we were trained to drop those boundaries there. And this can and so when we get older, we don't even know when we did it, we don't know how we did it. We've just done it once, and it kind of worked better than all the other ones. It was less painful that way, and our survival system loves that, and it's like, yes, that works, even if it doesn't um, work great. Um, so in those interactions, but after repeated use of those, they become conditioning, right? We're conditioned to, in this area, we just drop all the boundaries. And so when that happens after enough time, you don't even remember why you did it. And actually but you're still running the same program. And that then it has become a subconscious program. Okay. And once it's a subconscious program, that means it's a program that you're doing and you're doing it pretty well. Your brain doesn't even have to think about it too much to do it. Doesn't even need to use the thinking center to do it. and it will just go automatically below your awareness, below the level of consciousness, subconscious, right? And so, but in order to shift subconscious programs, one of the ways there's awesome things that happen in life that just automatically switch things, but I'm going to leave that to the powers that be. But there are intentional ways to shift that as well. And so, what we want to do with that stuff is we want to bring it back up to the conscious level and then move it through your brain's problem resolution process or subconscious programming resolution program. It's all the same program. I just like to call it different things sometimes because it does so many things. I just haven't found a phrase that this process does, because this process also is your growth and your maturity process. If this process is not functioning properly, you don't get any growth or maturity either. And that's why we have sayings where like they still act like they're 16. Yeah, they do, because that's brain function. And if we can get this path open, all of a sudden these things start maturing, right? Which brings me back to the conditioning with parents. And so, where this is something that was developed and helped you function in childhood, it needs to be on the path to maturity and growth and wellness and health. And that your brain has a process for that. That if that's not happening automatically, we really want to get in there and help your brain with that and be very intentional so that we can get your parental complaining program. And there's a lot in that. That doesn't mean it can't be processed quickly, but I feel like if I broke that down, we'd be here for a full hour. If you want me to do that, I am more than happy to do so. Let me know in the comments. If you just want me to call this the parental can't get out of parental complaining problem, that's what we'll call it. But if you want me to break this up into little bitty pieces, like a nerd, yeah, okay. But we want to get this and we want to move it through the healing pathways. Now, hear me. When this package goes and starts to come up, is activated, right? And it will be activated by the thought of your parent complaining with you or complaining at you, or it actually happening in real time. Either one of those is bringing this program to the surface. Instead of it just coming to the surface, causing pain and going back down into your subconscious programming, we want it to come up and move actually all the way through the process, your brain's process. That is a fast process. We just need to get it through. And in order to do that, a lot of times we break it down into the parts that it is, because we will need to untangle that. And every brain has the ability to process different amounts of information, um, different amounts of emotional pain and distress. It's kind of like the more you practice this stuff and the more you get, if you can get a little bit of information, emotional distress through, your brain actually gets better at it. And then because anything brains do, they'll get better at it. It's just how it is. And so if just like if you're processing some emotional distress, your brain is like, oh, we can do this and we can do this better. And so the next thing you know, it'll be able to take more and more. And pretty soon you've gotten all this parental complaining at you problem resolved and moving through. And so when that happens, you get a different program and you're free. You get to break free. You just are broken free from being stuck there, because your brain will actually take down the need to go into a survival state in those moments, and you'll actually stay calm and regulated, and which means that you'll have access to your prefrontal cortex, your thinking center, your reasoning. You will you'll just be more of who you actually are in the moment. And who you actually are might be somebody who is like, mom, I really, this is not my favorite conversation and I don't want to talk about this anymore. But I know that your best friend Lulu likes to talk about this. So in the future, why don't you go ahead and talk to her about this, right? That's a big leap. I don't make anybody do that, because lots of times if I were to suggest something like this, which you might be feeling it now, survival systems will respond by this. And if you do feel that cringiness, that's your survival system having a conversation with you. That's a whole conversation in the survival system language. And I don't like, when I'm doing this work, I don't want to disturb and upset the survival system, especially if you've got a whole anxiety, depression, or trauma disorder. Your survival system is under so much distress. And a lot of times it can't tell which way is up. And it's like we want to create so much change without distressing it and without freaking it out. So I really, I wouldn't make a big leap like that. But in this moment, I did want to give you an example. If you were freaked out by that, if your survival system said that would be a good thing to note about your survival system, and you can actually apply interventions right there with that. I know I would. If we were working together, we'd be using an intervention as your survival system was having that conversation with you. And that response, right? We're getting to look at the responses your survival system is having in real time. And because we can look at that, it's on the healing platform. We can actually take that through the healing pathways, and your whole brain will change and evolve your survival system reactions. And that is awesome. When your survival you go through the same event and your survival system does not freak out whatsoever, it's almost like what's happening here, you know? But then you're like, okay, yeah, this is how it should be. And then the next things we want to see is we want to see you being your authentic self. Sometimes that takes a little bit of practice in your brain to figure that out for you. But really, that is also something that should come on pretty quickly. So let me look at my notes. I've got a couple comments. Oh yeah, Karis, wonderful. Oh yes, another. Let me tell you a little bit about what's going on here. Let me tell you why parents complain. This would have been great in the beginning of this talk. Parents are complaining because they have ultimately they have this process of moving emotion is not working for them, and their complaining is a way the brain uses to do its emotional work. We don't, our culture does not like this, and I don't like it personally as a human. I don't enjoy being a complainer, and I don't enjoy listening to other people complain. However, if we come back and we understand this from a brain perspective, the brain's job is to grow, heal, and help you do awesome things. And it uses emotions to do that, both the positive and the negative ones equally. However, the positive ones just shoot right through the process, and the negative emotions get stuck along the way because they register as pain, and the survival system begins to push them out to keep you away from pain, right? So your own brain function can really shut you down and mess you up and block this process. And so it's something that happens with humans. And so this is happening with parents too. How many of them learned how to properly process emotions? How many of them were the victim of being complained at to their parent? Their parent complained to them, right? They could just be passing the program down. And so, but ultimately, what at the root of it is that they're having a difficult time moving whatever emotion that they're having. Some of this is another reason this happens is because they have a problem with somebody, but they can't go directly to that person. And I will tell you that this is usually a survival system problem, that the survival system won't go directly to that person and tell them and speak directly about the problem and resolve it, because their survival system believes that confronting conflict is dangerous. Many of our, and then they pass that on to you, and here you are doing that same thing with them. You can't confront them directly about the problem. That is a survival system problem. What I find is I don't find people don't know how to do this. I find that they actually can't do this. They can't. Their survival system will not let them have the conversations, address the conflict, um, have these sorts of healthy conversations, difficult conversations, but healthy conversations. And that in order to do them, sometimes they actually need to force their way through their survival system to do that, and have that conversation, which is very painful. You feel like you're going to throw up and all sorts of things, because your survival system is not joking around, and its job is to keep you from danger, even if that means making you throw up everywhere. It would rather have you do that than go have that conversation. But if you break through your survival system, it's very smart. It's like, you got through my protective strategies. I will make more. I will make more protective strategies. And that's what it gets busy doing. We don't need one of the most powerful pieces of equipment helping you create more strategies to keep you safe and surviving, when in fact this is not a dangerous situation to begin with. It's just scary because of past issues, right? And so we don't want to have you resolving this by pushing through your these difficult conversations, your survival system. We want to get your survival system to allow you to process all this information and go have a direct conversation with somebody, resolve conflict. Brains are wonderful at this, but where brains are not so wonderful at processing pain and emotional distress. And conflict is full of that, whether it's internal conflict or external conflict. Um, Another reason why parents do this is because, like I said, they want to vent. They have been trained to vent. There, this is how relationships are. Some of them feel like they don't have any other ways to relating to the relationship, and so instead of evolving, they're holding on to something that's not beneficial anymore. And so that is a reason why parents complain. Also, another reason which Karis was discussing and sharing was that the parents have no other friends. Um, I have a therapist answer to that, but I'm not going to do that. That one is a little jaded. I'm going to work on that. But um, but I'm going to have a human answer to this right now with some therapist influence. That it is very difficult, and it is for one person to meet any of the needs of any other one human. And humans are actually not designed like that. Now, there are every once in a while the random human that breaks the rule of that, right? Every once in a while you have that hermit that just their drive is to be alone. That's not how we are actually are as a species as a species. There we go. I got that switched. That's not how we are as a species. We are here for lots of connections. We're very big. We have lots of needs. And to get that from one person um, can really unbalance our relationships and really harm them. And that can become true when our parents have no other relationships or friendships or support systems, right? And so when our friends have no parents um, and 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 sometimes in Karis's mom's situation, her mom's older, all of her friends have passed away. And we can understand why that would be challenging and why that would be difficult to rebuild a support system, and why that could even be scary for Karis's mom to rebuild a French a support system and support network. But we all really need to be building that, right? We need to stay connected. Um, and so it can be hard when we need to detangle ourselves and say, hey, I can't be your only support person here. Or, hey, it's really important to me that you have more friends so that you have more outlets, so that you stay healthy and you stay well. You know, it's going to be really frustrating for you if I'm the only one available and I'm not all that available, right? I'm not as available as what you need. And I would prefer that you live, well, and that you have what you need. Who wants our parents to suffer? That's the other piece of this. Our survival system is very connected to our parent, and we can really feel like their suffering is our suffering. And in some ways it kind of is, but it's we really want some healthy boundaries in there. And we want to take all of that, we want to take it through your brain's healing pathways, because your brain's going to get more and more clarity the more it can actually process all this information. It needs to process what you want, what you need, um, what your preferences are, what your schedule looks like, who needs you, how much you're willing to offer people. It's like what you need for yourself, what you can afford to give away. Like this is all information your brain needs to process, right? And this really conversation is for those places where it's just uncomfortable to be the person that is being complained to, when you no longer want to be part of that. If you are in a situation with one of your relatives and they're complaining with you and you really are not bothered, this really isn't the conversation for you, right? Um, and so so but what happens is why can be such a challenge is if we're afraid of hurting their feelings, we're afraid of them suffering, we're afraid of they're becoming emotionally imbalanced or like emotionally unhinged. I'm looking for words, we don't call it that in the therapy world. But we can feel like that as a child to a parent. We can feel like, oh, if I don't do this, they're gonna topple off into, like, many of us have parents with mental illnesses, right? And we've been doing our best to keep them grounded and not fall off the deep end since we were 3, literally. Okay, and so that's old conditioning, and to think that that's just going to go away, I mean, it can just go away, it's going to just go away, but we can help the brain do that process if it's not going away, if we're stuck in doing the old things we were doing and we no longer want to be there. We can stay stuck in this if we're afraid of our parent rejecting us because we're setting healthy boundaries. In some family systems, healthy boundaries are considered unloving and uncaring. And so if you assert a boundary, you're saying your parent is reading that as and receiving the message, you don't care about me, right? And so they're rejecting you. So um, that can be very difficult and challenging. And your survival system registers rejection the same way it registers being stabbed in the gut. Let me say that differently because I want to be a little bit more accurate. Being stabbed in the gut is processed in the same part of the brain as being rejected, social pain. And so your survival system is programmed for a long time, many generations, hundreds of thousands of years, I don't know, whatever, a long time, to avoid rejection. And because we're pack animals, and to stay alive as part of our survival is to be part of the pack. If we're going to get rejected from our parent, that is incredibly threatening to your survival system, and helping your brain process that threat in the present time can really help your survival system evolve. Not your survival system evolve, but the reactions your survival system is making, the interpretations that this is not safe, can really be changed so that your brain no longer sees a rejection by a parent or a child or this person or a friend or a organization as a threat any longer. Okay, so and that can give you a lot of freedom because it's very difficult to go against your survival system. um, Another reason you might be stuck in listening to your parents complain is if you're afraid of their punishment, whether that punishment is rejection or not being able to come here or being disinherited. I mean, I have heard all the things. I haven't heard all the things. I've heard a lot of things. But that punishment can be very real and can be very painful. Um, and so, and I'm not even telling you that in order like to have healthy relationships here. Okay, I'm not going to say it like that. I'm not going to tell you that the answer is to make this stop and get out of this. I have had people do this processing work and realize, come to the decision that it is more beneficial for them to listen to the complaining than it is to stop the complaining. And that's a choice I never interfere with. Their brain is processing this information. They are the expert of their life, they're the expert of their relationships, and they can choose some of these things if they want to. What's the most important piece here is to be conscious of it and choose. When you're choosing this, then you're not being a victim, you're not harming yourself, you're accepting and you're choosing. And that is a very powerful place. So that's out there for you to think about as well. Um, so I never make people confront your parent. I never make people cut it off, move over here to Healthy Island. No, I want you to be healthy. That's one of your goals. But it's your brain's job to get you there, and the timing of that, and the way that happens, and the solutions that your brain creates and generates. That's up to you and your brain. What I need to know is that in this interaction with your parent, do you have healthy brain function? Are you in the if we were to put an fMRI on and we were to run that, would we see healthy brain activity, or would we see a survival state, right? My job is to get you there, but once we get to that piece, really, that's when so much healing happens, so many solutions, and you will find yourself interacting differently in those conversations, even if it's just being conscious and choosing it and choosing to participate. And that's really, really empowering. Another thing you might be afraid of is their defensiveness. We can absolutely become afraid of our parents' defensiveness. And those are the types of things our survival system cares about, and our whole body, and we care about. And so I'm not telling you what to do because I don't know, but what I do know is this stuff needs to get to the part of the brain that can help you solve problems, that can help you sort through all of this information that's coming up from your body, from your mind, from all those past memories, your subconscious programming, and all all the memories that are back there in the back of your brain somewhere, and get that processed, and really look at this stuff and see how you actually want to move forward. And so, but I want you to take away from this that this is not your fault. This is not necessarily your parents' fault. This is this is this is brain function. And if your parent originated with this and you got it just takes one of you to untangle this and to break free. And then the whole thing starts to unravel. So I think I've shared what I want to share, but I want you to know that if this is something that you would like my help with to really resolve this at the root, then I would encourage you to look into my two programs that I have, both Inner World Transformation, that's what they're called. One is a self study, and one is an 8-week intensive coaching program where I personally walk you through each part of this process. And so, but both are designed to help to teach you and to walk you through healing this stuff at multiple levels. And then to also create the wellness, to create the solutions that you want, and to really help you live authentic to who you are, as opposed to what your survival system is making you present as. And so it's really about that inner world transformation so that you can show up authentic and empowered in every area of your life, and really change that how your brain is functioning in those moments, so that you get to live from the front, from who you are, and really create some wonderful solutions, connections, and really untangle some dysfunctional processes. Yeah. So anyway, you can find that on my website, rachelmcleod.com, and yeah, and resolve this. I'm going to check on the comments, and we'll see what else happens here. Kara says, um, so she says, it's actually been going on my whole life. I just didn't realize it as a child. It probably explains why I complained so much. Um, yeah, when so people that are complaining on repeat they're stuck in the incompletion of the brain's process for resolving the underlying emotion that causes us to complain in the first place. We don't have problems with our problems, we have problems with how we feel about our problems. And so complaining really helps us to get into the muck and emotion of it, which is wonderful if we're doing that well. This is why I really encourage people to, if you find I wrote a guide to really great complaining. I'm going to have to attach it to this, um, to how to complain well, to complete this process that your brain is actually trying to do, so that you're not just annoying yourself and dumping and just on repeat trying to complete this process. And so, but complaining really does that. And so it really helps us do that, but then it doesn't finish the process. And so we end up just starting over and complaining again and again and again. So if your parent is doing this, that means they're stuck processing an emotion under here that's not processing. A lot of times, maybe they've never been able to process that emotion. Maybe their parents, maybe they have really good ability to process all of these emotions, but this one they just can't, and sometimes it's multiple ones. Um, trauma can really impair our ability to process any and all negative emotions. And when we want to heal from a trauma disorder, we need to not only process all the old stuff, but we also need to get this brain function up and running, because you'll need to be able to process negative emotion for the rest of your life. Negative emotions is what people do. It's part of our life navigation dashboard team, life navigation team, our emotions and our negative emotions as well. They're our helpers. They just process in the brain very differently, and so they can cause problems for us. Um, but what happens is when we pick this up too as children of complainers, you'll notice that that same emotion you don't know how to process either. And you'll use the same strategies as the parent. So really the solution here is just really just learning how to process that specific emotion in there, so that you can you'll need that one. You'll need the ability to process that. And yes, that would be why you would complain so much, is one, you got that program. Oh, this is like our parents are giving us, this is how you do this, this is how you do that. That's part of what we're doing in childhood, is we're learning. Not only that, but we're actually practicing their strategies. Don't get me started on mirroring neurons and nerding out. Um, but we are actually practicing how they process their emotions. And that's why one of the best gifts you can give your children is to really be great at processing all the emotions. Practice it, because that's what your kids will have too at the end of the day, is they're going to get your ability to process emotions. Now, that's not the end, right? They can go on and keep building that, but later, and amplifying it or fixing stuff, and this strategy isn't as good for me as it was for my mom, let me try this. But at least they know that it's out there, right? So you're giving them a major leg up. But yes, this is why you would complain so much. And please hear that you're trying to complete a brain process, that you're not just a complainer whiner out there. You're actually trying to do a very valuable, valid brain process. It's just not processing, it's not completing. And so as you learn to work with your brain, you'll help it complete that. You'll figure out, where do I need that support? Right there. Okay, I'm going to help in here. And you'll watch that process resolve quickly. And once you can get it done once, you can help your brain complete a project once, you can do the next one and the next one and the next one. Pretty soon, you have bigger skills and more skills and more skills, and you're processing away. If anybody has any questions about anything I'm sharing, go ahead and post those. I will answer those as I get to them. Okay. Yes, parent doesn't have any friends. They all passed away. Um, that I addressed that earlier in the conversation, but yes, that's a real issue, and there's lots of reasons. A lot of times, some of why we're stuck listening is because we're stuck in pity and sorrow for our parent, and over compassion. Um, and when we get stuck in the back of the brain, a lot of times our resources and skills and strategies are in the front of the brain, and so when we're stuck with like all this emotional distress and it not getting through, we're stuck. We're missing out on the front brain activity. Okay, we're missing out on being able to find resources. And so sometimes we're feeling so much sorrow and pity for our parent that we're not even seeing that, oh wait, this is a real viable solution right here, very simple, and mom would love that. So when we can really help our brain finish this process, the light bulbs turn on. And when those light bulbs turn on, the solutions and things we that were right there in front of our face the whole time, we can actually see them, and we'll actually just start putting them together, making suggestions or making different things happen, right? That we didn't see before. That's one of the reasons why it's so important to make this shift internally, because your brain will be able to function. You'll be able to see solutions. I say this stuff. I'm having a hard time saying this some of this stuff because it seems so duh. But when you're stuck in a survival state, you really. I was working with a woman once, and we were working on a panic attack in the water, because of her water phobia, and we were in the water, and she was in a survival state, but not too much. So we were working on it. She hadn't totally flipped out into a full panic. So we were working on this. and regulating. I asked this person, um, what solutions do you have right now for keeping yourself safe? They could not find it. And I want you to understand, we were in the water, it was this deep, and we were bending our knees so that the water was up here. And it was triggering their survival system. And so they were starting to panic. And so we're tapping and we're doing this stuff. But I don't think we started tapping yet. But I asked her about solutions. So then we're tapping, tapping, tapping. And and um, and finally the solution came that she could just stand up. She could just go from kneeling where the water was here to here. And then she was like kind of embarrassed because she was like, oh, but no, that's how the brain works. If your survival system is blaring, you don't have access to your reasoning center or your solutions, right? And so in our life, with our relationships with our children, in our interactions with everything that's important to us, we don't want to be in a survival state. We're missing so much information and data. We're missing so many opportunities for connection. We're missing so many solutions for little tiny problems, for big, massive problems. We're missing all of that information where we could be gathering it and really getting some powerful healing going on. And so for me to tell you, we want to complete the brain's process. For me to tell you that, we need to get you out of a survival state and into the front of your brain, that sounds kind of just it doesn't really it's not really doing it for me. I don't feel amazing saying this. But when you see that shift happen and you see the light bulbs turn on and you see that you have access to the front of your brain where you have not before, when you can actually do that in the middle of a panic attack so you don't panic, so you can do that in the middle of an argument that you're having with your kid, that you don't want to be behaving like this, and all of a sudden you go back to being a reasonable human, this adds up big. And now your brain is learning new things, and it's actually learning to shift you out of that on its own. And then you're seeing your child in a new way, you're seeing your mom in a new way, you're seeing the situation in a new way, and it's easy solutions. And then your life starts filling up with solutions instead of your life filling up with, I'm trying to find the solution and I can't, I'm trying to find the solution and I can't, I feel all these emotions, I feel all the that's not what we want your life to look like. And so when I'm talking about this one itty bitty little shift, this shift is massive. And this little shift is the shift I use to help people resolve their anxiety, depression, and trauma disorders in 2 to 6 months. Stuff that previously took us years. If and most people are still telling people even to cope with this and expect your brain to be like this for the rest of your life. No. I was just talking about this with a client today who's had massive depression for most of her life. And that's what she was expected to do until she ran into me. Just prepare for depression. Just push past it. Now, that's a whole nother conversation for a whole nother day. That is not how I resolve this um, depression. I help the brain resolve depression. And then the brain says, oh, I don't think we need this depression thing here anymore. And that's how you know depression goes away. But I couldn't resist. Um, okay, back to the questions I'm answering here. Okay, so Kara says she's aware of that. She speaks about loneliness all the time since my father passed. Absolutely. And so, from what I'm hearing, mom's got a lot of grief going on, as she should. Grief is a really important process for all of us, and it's a powerful process. I think of it as very similar to the birthing process, to giving birth to something. Um, but it's not as cool as the birthing process. You get, and even then, um, but it's a very wild, raw thing that is much different. It's just different. And I think, as I want to absolutely honor that for you and with you. And I think that we can honor that while maintaining healthy boundaries. How would be up to you and your brain. And and healthy boundaries could be even you choosing to listen. but it also could be you suggesting some alternatives or creating some boundaries with, I'm noticing as much as I would love to be here for you, as much as I don't want to see you in pain, and as much as this grief is real and you should be going through this process, you have every right to. I'm noticing that I'm not doing well as being your only support person, and that means that that's not going to be good for our relationship. Um, and see how that goes. When we're talking boundaries with people, reasoning with them and helping them understand why this isn't a good scenario is one strategy that doesn't always work for many reasons. I'll have to go into this in a different video, but that's a strategy for the front of the brain. And a lot of times the front of the brain is in agreement, but the back of the survival system won't allow it. And so you need to actually, using other strategies can really help shift the boundaries with by bypassing the prefrontal cortex. And we do this stuff naturally. We just don't know that we're doing it, so we don't have the um, we can't use it intentionally. So sometimes just knowing that stuff really helps. Oh, okay. Um, so 14 years a long time to grieve? Yes. Okay. And um, so grief does evolve, but um, because because you're talking about this being a long-standing time with mom doing the complaining feature, that signals to me that she has difficulty moving some emotion. And now that you're saying grief is going on for 14 years, I would also say that she's having difficulty with more than one emotion processing that. And so grief can get stuck because of that. And it doesn't mean the whole grieving process can be stuck. It may be just some of the things. Um, but she might find if she really looks under this stuff that the loneliness has always been there, and that the loneliness possibly caused by early childhood interactions with her own family um, was amplified by the loss of dad, and so or the loss of her husband. And so, when grief is compounded, it is very difficult to process. And feeling lonely as a child, there's lots of grief involved with that because it's loss of connection. There's just grief in that process, and so it's compounded grief, and and if and that's really why it's so great that we have these tools and strategies because once it comes like that, I mean, people take this stuff to the grave. They take compounded grief, trauma from childhood to the grave, decades, 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 70 plus, 80 plus. My oldest client is 86. We're still unpacking stuff from adolescence and childhood, right? Um, it doesn't go away. Time does not heal these things. Brains do. Now, we hope with time, the different things that would help somebody heal would take place. But that's not really guaranteed for everybody. And so that's why it's really great that we have these strategies so that we can apply the support that's needed to help the brain complete the process. And I have lots of clients grieving right now because of traumas in my therapy practice, in my own life. I just done a massive grieving project myself, and I'm not necessarily saying I'm done. It's just that we want, or that any of them are done, or that we will be done. We want to see it moving. We don't want to see the same thing repeatedly. Brains really should be coming through that and resolving it and then allowing more grief to flow through and really really transforming the relationship with grief. So grief is a deep topic. I'm not a grief expert. I am a brain. I do brain work. I help the brain process this. So this is not at all, please do not think I am a grief expert in here, or take what I'm saying for exact. But I would like to see. I would need more information talking with your mom about the origin of the loneliness, um, and if it is with the grief when 14 years ago, then that's absolutely some place to work. But if it's actually the origin is earlier, it would need to be resolved there in order to resolve 14 years ago. So that stuff might not even be part of the dad passing away grief. It might be a different issue altogether. So making the so um, yeah. So Karis is saying you're right. I remember her saying she was lonely when we all lived in the same house. Yes. So that's the deal. So mom has some. This is my assessment from afar that has no value without talking to mom. But from here, what I'm gathering is mom has some unresolved childhood issues that are holding her into patterns of loneliness, and by resolving those early ones will free her up to really make some really deep connections and resolve that loneliness in the present. And it's worth doing. You are never too old to heal. Gosh, um, my older clients are like thrilled. They're like, I can't believe I'm still doing this. Can't believe this is an issue. And then they resolve it and they're like, whoo, finally, so their age is nothing but a number. Apparently, as long as you still have, and I'm not going to finish that. Okay. Okay. Um, so Kara says she's asking way too many questions and she's gonna go get the funds to sign up for my program. Great, good solution. I do a lot less talking while working together because really it's about your brain finishing connections, your brain being able to do the work it needs to do the work it wants to do. And gosh, you know, I was talking to another therapist that I mentor, and we were talking about this process, and I was showing her how we when we were working together on something, I made a mistake on something. I was off. I was totally off. That's why I love brains. And her brain humored me. I could see she was interested in it a little bit, but it was not where her brain wanted to go. And as soon as I was finished being off, her brain came right back through and picked up, and it was like now it had clarity. It's like this is really what I want to talk about, and it just went off, and we did our interventions, massive healing. But the deal here, and what I was sharing with her, is brains want to heal. Like as therapists, we just help brains heal. Our job here is not to be perfect, is really stay out of your brain's way and let healing happen. And even which in that moment with her, I had uh, stepped over my own um, protocol, um, but it just really your brain wants to heal. Our brains are doing all of this stuff to help us reach our goals, and if it's off target, if you're not getting to your goals, some of these symptoms that we have are actually when we get those resolved, your brain is like, oh, let's go. And so see all of this stuff as just portals for transformation and freedom. So that's all I want to share today. And we'll talk more, and I'll answer questions and send me some messages and drop your questions here. I will answer them. And again, all of this stuff is what I'm teaching in my 8-week program. And yeah, you can jump on and get started right away. All right, take care.